Okay. Hi, and welcome to my latest episode of Mrs. Mummypenny Talks. I have another guest for you, and I'm very excited to have this wonderful guest because Gammell is a wonderful friend of mine and an incredible owner of a business, so a perfect candidate for my podcast. Now, I'll hand over to, I need to do the right way, to Cara to introduce herself and give us a little bit of a bio of her life, because it's an interesting one.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's so nice, isn't it?
It's so nice. Yeah, we need to remember that this is going out on YouTube and a podcast, so we can't get too personal with what we talk about because we're friends.
Yeah, so I'll bear that in mind. Okay, so I'm Cara Gammell. I'm a freelance financial journalist. I started out in journalism. Actually, I went to journalism school to avoid being deported. That's another story for another day. And then started working at the Telegraph on the money desk. And at that time, the only thing I knew about money is I didn't have any. And that's actually done me well in the long run, I think, because it's given me a unique perspective. It's, as anyone who's starting out in their career, nobody has any cash in the beginning. And I worked there for about 8 years and then had a baby. And 2 weeks before she was born, I took voluntary redundancy, which was amazing. And
Nice.
yeah, and then went freelance after when I returned to work after my maternity leave.
How long did you take for maternity leave? Did you feel the pressure to go back a bit earlier?
No, I took the full 12 months, or I took 12 months,
Cool.
because I didn't know if I would ever have another, so to speak, because I was quite lucky to have with that baby. I mean, everybody's lucky, but it was hard making one. So I decided to enjoy it as much as I could. I did sign a book deal while I was pregnant to write a book while I was on maternity leave when the baby slept.
You wrote, hang on, right. You wrote a book when you were on maternity leave after your baby had been born, your first baby.
My first baby. I had big plans. I was going to write a book. I was going to craft. I was going to learn skills.
Okay.
I had no idea what motherhood
would feel
be
like a zombie for the first.
Yes. So what I did is I didn't actually write the book until I went back to work a little bit. And so I would write every night and I had to put myself in a hotel room and it was terrible because I'd signed a contract. So it had to be done by July and I went back to work, I think in April. So yeah, it was very stressful. Anyway, did it, survived. And then Your Best Friend's Guide to Cash, which is the name of my blog. And so I've been freelancing ever since. I write for all the national newspapers and, you know, the Times, Telegraph, the Guardian, the Metro, magazines, Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, that kind of thing. And then I also do lots of kind of behind the scenes editorial stuff and broadcast. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's great. It works well with, you know, my situation at home and I love it. Yeah. And I really do. Because I've started blogging when my daughter went to school, that gives me the freedom to kind of write about things that I really want to write about rather than what I'm commissioned to write about.
And that's how we met, isn't it? So we met at a UK money blogger conference.
Yes.
I'm going to say maybe 3 years ago.
Yep.
I remember you sitting behind me and I was sat next to Faith, our mutual friend who you worked with at the Telegraph.
She hired me at the Telegraph.
She hired you?
Yeah.
And Faith prodded me. It's like, Lynn, you need to meet this girl sat behind us. And you were like, I bought your book.
I did. I had read your book over the summer. So I met you, I think it was in September. But I had met another blogger at an event she's also a journalist. And I was like, what are you doing here? She's like, oh, well, how much, you know, I'm going to do something about blogging. We start talking about what you could charge and all that kind of thing. And I was like, hold on a second. And on the train, I bought all of my domain names. And
amazing. You already had the book, so you had the name of the blog.
Yeah, exactly. And so the words have never been the issue. For me, the challenge was like figuring out how to actually work the internet. Because when I worked at newspapers and things, all you do is you submit the content and other people do all of that stuff for you. So that, for me, that was a bit of the challenge. But the reason why I call it Your Best Friend's Guide to Cash is because my friends aren't reading the national newspapers, not because they don't want to, but they don't have time.
They're
We're
too
always,
big.
yeah. And I used to read the papers on the weekends, but once you have a child, you don't really have that luxury in the beginning.
No.
But yet they all needed the information. They were asking me questions all the time. Like everywhere I went, I would be asked, like, oh God, I'm spending a fortune on food, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Yeah, or what's the best instant access savings account? And
yeah, exactly. And so then I would explain it in a way that I would explain it to my friends. So then I realized that because it's very easy to make money can be boring or scary or overwhelming. But if you just explain it in like a chatty, normal manner, it suddenly demystifies the whole thing. So for instance, one example I always give is because I'm self-employed, I don't have any pension contributions from someone else other than my boss, which is me.
How many years have you been self-employed?
Audrey's 7, so 6. Yeah. And so I do my own pension contributions, etc. But my girlfriends, I'm always like, I hope you're putting as much in as possible. And they're like, oh, here she goes again.
She's talking about bloody pensions again.
Yeah, we're at a party, past the Prosecco, Gammell's talking about pensions. But the thing is I said, because whatever you put in, your employer will match. Sometimes they double, depends on whatever your deal is at work. Yep. Would you turn down a Christmas bonus? And they're like, hell no. And I'm like, why are you turning down the free pension money? It's still free money. You just get it at a different date. And then when you explain it like that, suddenly it becomes like you're kind of sticking it to the man and getting the extra money out of the business. And it changes your perspective. And I found it's explaining it in those kind of ways where suddenly you're like, oh.
And I think we've got a lot of similarities between what we do, because we're both extremely we're in a very similar situation life-wise.
We are
both. I'm divorced, you are soon to be divorced. You've got a child, I've got 3, but both all the children are pretty little, and we both run our own companies from home, and we have that trying to get into London like 1 or 2 days a week to meet up with our clients and do their networking thing, and which I love, all of that sort of stuff, and I'm sure you do as well. But
it's great.
Challenging in itself, because we've also got the school run. Although I only have my children like half the week, or it's can be random sometimes, but so I do have quite a chunk of spare time, but then I have time that is solely for my children. So it's really important to have a flexible job, right? But I think what we're both very passionate about is, or I know, is like financial freedom for women, right?
Yes.
Because a woman is not just put here to save money on the monthly budget, which I know is a great thing to do, and we absolutely talk about money saving hacks and switching your energy and that kind of stuff. But the real big deal is making sure women know about pensions, gender pension gap, the inequality between what women and men get paid, and national insurance gaps because women take time off for caring for their children, all these kind of financial issues which a lot of women don't know about.
Well, often I think if you think about the kind of traditional, the way like I'm sure in our households when we were married, you probably handled all of this kind of thing, and I did, but that's because this is what we do for a living. Oh, can you see me?
Yeah.
And but I think in a lot of households, the woman tends to do the day-to-day spending, and the man seems to traditionally do the mortgage, the pensions, that kind of thing. And it's more like the long-term planning. And so I think that, and sure, we're already doing everything. It's like, it's nice to be able to delegate something out, but unfortunately, you can't rely on somebody else to plan for your future, because 50% of marriages, I think, or just a stat similar to that, end. If you're relying on your husband's pension, I'm not bitter about not being married anymore, but I mean, the reality is if you're relying on somebody else's pension, whether it's, that's not a good plan. That's basically like a different type of sugar daddy. It's true. It's like, but when you think of it that way, so you've got to do it for yourself. And the problem is is that women get paid. We start out from our very first job. There's a stat, and I think it's like 25% of male graduates ask for more money when they apply for their very first job. And women,
Wow.
and women,
We just accept what we're given.
Yeah. And I think I said, thank you. I think my first job was 18 grand. And I was like, brilliant. Barely be able to make ends meet, but I'm happy.
I would never have thought of negotiating my first
No,
job.
of course you wouldn't. Of course you
No.
wouldn't. And so then,
I'm grateful. You're right. Women are encouraged to feel grateful for when.
like they're doing me a favor by hiring me and me busting my ass all day for them for next to nothing. Where men are kind of have typically in the past been raised to not be that way.
Yeah.
And I think it's changing, with our generation of mothers are trying to impart different types of knowledge. But so right from the very beginning, you don't start off on an even playing field with a male colleague. He's already a little bit higher. And then as time goes on, and say if your pay increases at the same percent over time, it's always going to be skewed. This is kind of hard to do in a
And then average age of what, 30-ish when a professional woman has the babies. If I look at my salary, because I was employed in the corporate world until I was 37. And if I look at my salary from the age of 30 to 37, I'll talk about numbers, I don't care. So when I was 30, I was earning 50 grand a year because I was working at Tesco's, like pretty good job, accountancy at Tesco's. Then I had a baby. I actually left Tesco's, went to Threshers, who was a wine company who have gone back. I think my salary went up to maybe 55 because I jumped from one company to another. But then I had another baby. Then I got another job after the second baby because Threshers went bust. And I went to EE, and my starting salary there was 55 again. I took the same money. I didn't, because I was grateful for the opportunity, because I had 2 kids. It was a job that was near to where I lived. So I was like, oh my God, like, give me the money. And by the time I left, my base salary was, I did jump up a few steps in EA. I think I was on about 70 grand by the time I left. But that was only because I suddenly worked out between child 2 and 3 that I needed to negotiate more. And I had some really good role models at work, one of which, Andrew, is my mentor now. And he always encouraged me to question everything and ask for more all the time. So it's only with the sort of power of a good mentor who was a guy that I actually learned all of that.
Well, and oftentimes women, through choice, often they stay and maybe reduce their hours, go part-time, it doesn't make financial sense for them to continue to work because of the extortionate cost of childcare cancels out. That's a very real issue. And so then we stay home. And I mean, I went kind of to part-time up until Audrey went to school, but that was my choice. And I drove a terrible car for those years. But that was, to me, that was like almost symbolic of the fact that was my choice. And so I had like my Citroen Zara and Picasso. And I called it my Mummobile. And I drove that thing into the ground. And then when I upped my hours and I went full time when Audrey went to school, which actually isn't full time because school goes to 3 o'clock. But then I got a better car because, that I was done with that sacrifice, so to speak. But if you do that, you automatically, you take a reduction in your pay because you're working fewer hours.
A reduction in your pension contribution.
Precisely. And then also you might be overlooked for future jobs and promotions. You maybe can't commit to a full-time role. And then it's just one thing after another. And suddenly a friend of mine, we had babies at the same time. We have a similar job. And uniquely, her husband is also works in the national news. And his salary has pretty much doubled in the same period since we've had children. and hers is, I think, has gone up maybe 5 to 10%.
Makes me angry.
Yeah, and it really makes me angry too. And but then I sometimes think that we're so busy just trying to keep so many balls in the air. It's easy to think, I can't, I'll ask for a pay rise later. Or
Yeah.
why would they give me a pay rise? I only work part-time. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, you only work part-time, but you only get paid part-time money.
Yeah.
Like, you're not being paid full-time to just do half the work. So it's about kind of acknowledging our value. And you and I have spoken before about how I say that women, because I'm, how I love income protection insurance. Because
you do love income protection insurance.
I do.
It's
I know.
your favorite financial product. You need to explain to people what income protection insurance is.
Okay, so stay with me here, people, because I know it already sounds boring. But income protection insurance is basically a type of insurance that you take out on yourself. So if you became too ill to work, you would be paid a salary until you were able to return to work or retire. So if you had, for instance, critical illness gives you a lump sum. So say if you had a heart attack and then you were able to return to work after 3 months of rehab, you would get maybe 60 grand payout, which would help. But if you had something more long-term, like say multiple sclerosis, and then became unable to do your job, not any job, but your job, then that would pay you out for your lifetime. And so we all have life insurance.
Well, no, we don't.
No, we don't. Sorry. Most of us, if you have something, it seems to be when you get a mortgage, some people get life insurance. You're prompted at the mortgage during the mortgage process.
Yeah. And the life insurance will pay out if you die, and it normally pays out the value of your outstanding mortgage.
Exactly. So, but I always say it's all well and good so if your spouse dies and they can pay the house is paid off. Well, fat lot of good that is if you can't afford to run it or put, so.
Oh my gosh.
And then you're a single parent suddenly with, your partner dies and you're doing everything yourself. It's not going to impact your income. So, but income protection and the reason why I feel really strongly about it is because I grew up in a house where both of my parents got gravely ill in their 40s. And I mean, in 1992, my dad was given 3 months to live. And he's still alive. Like,
oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, both of my parents. Yeah, but he retired. He was a headmaster, and
Such a stressful job.
Yeah, and he retired. He was 42, and which is 2 years older than I am. My sister's older than that.
Yeah.
And he was able to. He had to give up his job. He didn't want to, but he was inoperable, so he had no choice really. And he was paid out in income until he retired. Like, he's 71 now.
Yeah.
And then my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in her 40s, and she owned a private nursery, and she started to stop working. And same thing. So, but I was 12 and my sister was like 14, and it meant that we stayed in our family home. So like my dad was in and out of the hospital a lot in the beginning, particularly. And it meant that we still had the neighbors that we trusted next door that they rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night. And it was like that consistency and stability that was really important to me. So I have obviously all of that, but mine's more expensive because of my clearly terrible genetics. But I think, women tend to think we don't make enough money to insure our income, but that's because we're only thinking about bringing home the bacon and what we're taking home financially. I do a hell of a lot around here for free. So, I do childcare, married or not. And when I was married, my ex-husband, I guess, he was the breadwinner, so to speak, financially. But if we calculated what I was contributing in unpaid labor, I could wipe the floor with him, like I was making a lot of money. And I know that for a fact because I wrote an article about it and I calculated it with the Office of National Statistics calculator.
Did you?
Yeah, which shows how many hours of childcare, how many hours of cooking and cleaning. So if I died, who would do that? Or if I was incapacitated, had a stroke or something, he would have had to pay someone to do that or take a drop in his own income to do it.
And it's really, I need to be careful about what I say now because I can't talk too much about my current situation. But what I was going to say, I was going to touch on consistency actually of housing and where you live. So I have kept the family home, and it was such a big deal to do it, and I pulled out all the stops I possibly could.
I know. Yeah.
Oh my, like we talked so much about how stressed out I was when, you know, the mortgage application was going through, and when I was finalizing my company accounts, I was so stressed. But I got the money, thank you Santander, who were the only mortgage company who would consider 1 year of accounts.
Oh really? That's good to know, because
you might have to deal with I can help you with future stuff, but yeah, and it was all done via Trussle, who with the
yes, I remember you say that.
And so I got the mortgage, gave him the 100 grand that I had to give him to get out of the house after 10 months, I can say that. And then but I kept the house, and I've got that consistency for the family, which is really, really important, because as you say, like we live in a little cul-de-sac where we know all the neighbours, and like my neighbour Shelley often looks after my youngest, because she's got a boy and they're the same age. And it's just but the only thing I'm thinking of, and I have spoken about this publicly, is I live in a village that is quite cliquey, and I don't know, I don't know whether I feel like going somewhere different.
Well, the thing is what I think the important thing is that you have the choice now.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. I've said this time and again. Money can't buy you happiness. Anyone who says that has never been skinned, I might add. But it can buy you choice and options. And I think that is crucial to happiness in life. But also when it comes to your children, you fought tooth and nail to maintain the consistency of having the family home, because when you're little, and I can tell you, I was 12, the world revolved around me, and the world's in my mind, the world's very small when you're that age.
Yeah.
It's just like your neighborhood, your school, I don't know, maybe the kids these days are, because they're all on the internet. We weren't on the internet in my day, but generally speaking, you don't go very far on your own. So it's about maintaining that space. But I think what you've been able to do, and back in the day when I was younger, my parents were really big about like my parents were basically raising little feminists without kind of realizing it. And they would always really encourage having a really good education. And they're always like, there's no such thing as a waste of investment in education and blah, blah, blah. And I just eye roll. And then I remember one time my dad said, well, babe, because that's what he always calls me. And he said, I just want you to be able to get a job, so if you accidentally marry an asshole, you can afford to leave. And Dad, and he doesn't swear. And I was just like, okay, Dad.
But that's such an amazing thing to say to your child.
Yeah.
To a girl.
Yeah. Yep. And so, and it's true. Like, I am in a position where I have chosen at the moment to make a little bit less over the years, because I wanted to be home and do the work balance. If I needed to do everything on my own, I could do it. It was not, so I have a lot of options. I may not like all of my options.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean. And so I think by having money, and it doesn't, it's not necessarily an education. Back in the day, it kind of sort of was the situation, but the world has changed. And I think it's important to be able to enable yourself to make choices. And so that's why I'm big on things like insurance. People are insuring their mobile phones and their holidays, but they're not insuring their hands. Like I always joke, I'm like, these are my tools, because this is how I make money. I write and I talk, and like I stuck a steak knife in my hand the other day, and it was very bad and very deep, and I'll spare you the gory details, but that when I was like looking at it, and after I'd pulled the knife out, I thought, my first thought was, I can see parts I've never seen before. But then I thought, what about my tendons? Like I was thinking about my fingers, and and I actually thought, and this is because of probably my job, well, I've got insurance,
Mm.
So, or even with COVID-19, if I had coronavirus and some people are really having kind of the long tail effects
Yeah,
where they're saying that, months and months and months and they're unable to work,
yeah. It's
and
like
you
real
can,
exhaustion, isn't it?
yeah, you can claim on your income protection insurance. You
As
don't
long as, because what I will say, 'cause do you know what, I was editing my chapter. It will be your favorite chapter of my book, obviously. I was
Mhm.
editing the protection and wills chapter.
Yep.
I've made it fun. I promise people who are going to be buying this book, I've made it really interesting because it's based on a lot of, like, it's based on my parents dying and my dad's will being
Mhm.
invalid when so my mum died, then my dad died. Let me tell the story. So my mum died when I was 16, and they had a will where the money just passed to the other parent. Fine.
Mhm.
And then when my dad died, he'd got remarried in between mum dying
Uh,
and him dying. So the will was invalidated and he
mhm.
hadn't changed the will. So all of the estate went into probate. And there was like a little bit of life insurance, but obviously there was a house and there was stuff. There wasn't loads and loads of money, but and when we eventually came out of probate, I think it took about 9 months, a year to come
It
out of
takes a
probate.
very long time.
Like, who on earth paid for the funeral? Like, who on earth paid for the bills after, my dad had gone? I have no idea who, because I was
Mhm.
19. Like,
Yeah, but you don't have any money, and you certainly don't have funeral money when you're.
no. And the funerals were like really quite big funerals. I don't understand where the money came from, but
Funerals are extortionately
they're so
expensive. The
expensive.
stats on how funeral costs have increased over the past like 8 years are off the charts.
One of my friends, one of I don't think I've actually asked any questions. We're just chatting,
Mhm.
but it's all very good stuff. Yeah, one of my friends, sadly, her mum died last year, and she had it wasn't a particularly grand funeral, but it was a funeral at a Catholic church, and then the crematorium, and then the
Mhm.
wake was at a cricket club, but it was like 10 grand.
Yeah. Well, my father-in-law passed away very unexpectedly about 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago. And he had everything done properly, like to the point where there was a letter left with the will that he had written to his family in case of the event of his death. It was very nice, actually.
Wow.
And I was helping my mother-in-law, I'm still very close to, sort it all out. And he died in November, on my birthday, actually. Died in November, and then it was July before she had access to any of his pension or anything that was in his name.
Because
Luckily,
was it because the life insurance wasn't put into a trust?
well, they didn't have necessarily, they were already mortgage free and things like that. So
Right.
it was more pensions issues.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they had an emergency credit card, for instance, which I always say, have a credit card, just in case, you're stuck somewhere and you need access to money. And, but that was in his name. She was the secondary card holder, which is often the case. Somebody's got to do
Yeah.
it. He died. Boom. That account had to be
Frozen.
closed. Then luckily she had money in ISAs as well, but he had a mobility car because he had a bad leg. 30 days after his death, the car had to go back.
So they didn't have a car.
No, she used my Mummobile for a long time. And so she had savings, but understandably didn't want to spend them until she knew when she was getting access to, he left her in a very good financial position, but there was 9 months before she could get
Yeah.
the access to the cash, which she had saved her whole life as well. But because
Yeah.
traditionally she was the stay-at-home mother,
Yeah.
and a homemaker, and it was, and I was such an eye-opener for me because I write about this all the time. And Chris, my father-in-law, he had done everything correctly, and it still
Yeah.
took that long.
So in order to, I need to flip back on a couple of points.
Mm-hmm.
So for life insurance, the really important thing is to, when you set it up with whoever you choose to set it up with, I will shout out Lifesearch because
That's
that's
who
who
I
I've
use.
used.
Yeah.
And we know them really well. And I've interviewed Tom Bakery, and you know him, who is
Mm-hmm.
the guy that runs the whole company. Full disclaimer, I do have an affiliate relationship with them. So if you set up a life insurance policy, you get some cash back as the listener of Mrs. Mummypenny, and I get a bit of a referral fee as well, but the money's sort of split 50-50, so it feels quite fair. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so they Lifesearch actually put your life insurance into a trust, which means that if I die, or I don't want to say that, if I die tomorrow, touch wood, I'm sat on a wooden table, the money is pretty quickly accessible from my life insurance.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to reel back on is about income protection insurance. So I have income protection insurance, again, thank you Lifesearch, but I can't access my money until 3 months after the bad illness.
There's also, it's often like a deferral
period,
because
that takes the monthly cost down.
Yeah, and that's pretty standard, and it's a way of, it probably would take a couple of months before you know what's going to happen anyway. You might be optimistic and hope things will improve, and so I think that's kind of understandable. And I think one good thing is I've worked with Lifesearch back when I used to work them on the Telegraph. And they did, when I got all of my income protection, I was like 28 when I took it all out, and it was very complicated because of my background. And I remember the name of the lady that does it, Marie Bedding, and she was and I met her recently, and she
was like, I've got the most difficult customer here.
Yeah, really, like it was quite legendary. But I'm fully covered. I answered every question so that there was no way that I could be caught out for withholding information and meet a policy. Because what's the point in paying for a policy you can't claim on?
Yeah, that's a really important point to make there. You have to be, when you go through life insurance and income protection insurance, the process, you've got to be really honest about everything. So my life insurance, so my income protection insurance policy just literally went through last week because I switched it from one provider to another because my first provider, so I've had mental health issues in the past. I've had some time off work when I was at Tesco's 13 years ago with depression. So the company I was with, sorted out by somebody else who I won't name, they wouldn't cover me for any mental health issues. So what Lifesearch have done is they found a new provider who will cover me for absolutely everything, but there's a deferment period of like 1 or 2 years. But like if I get really bad depression now then and have to finish work, then they won't cover me, but in 2 years' time they will.
Interestingly, I think this is an issue that affects women a lot as well, because there's the aspect of postnatal depression as well. And postnatal depression is, or is it postpartum in the UK? Well, anyway, basically.
Postnatal.
Yeah. And basically, that's not necessarily caused by an existing mental health issue. That's hormonal, and it's specific to women, and it's very situational. And not necessarily an indicator that you want to struggle with mental health issues in the future. But if you're trying to do your own protection policies, this is why it's really useful to go to a broker. They say, have you ever had trouble with depression? That's the question. They don't ask about any other kind of get more specific. Like depression is a very long, the scale of what can be considered depression where it's completely debilitating, situational. You could be grieving and be off work for depression because you've lost a loved one. There's so many different things. And so that's why I found using a broker really helpful, because I also don't have time to do that. And I don't feel like I have that skill set. But it was little things for me as well for instance, I have ADD, I have attention deficit disorder, which is kind of unusual in the UK for an adult my age, but I was diagnosed in my 20s. And that came, one of the questions was, have you ever seen a psychiatrist? And I'm like, well, years ago, I went to an educational, when I was going through all the testing, actually the woman was, in addition, a psychiatrist, but then automatically that became a red flag. Like I was there for ADD, not for a mental health issue. That's classified as technically a learning disability, like dyslexia. And would dyslexia impact my income protection insurance, and it became, I got kind of defensive about it because I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not, but I was able to I had somebody who knew what she was doing to be like, yeah, that's not the same at all. So let's explore that further and find, so I'm covered for all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm also covered, Lifesearch, they do all, and I'm not an affiliate, like I don't have a deal with them. That's who I use and I like.
Yeah.
They made sure that all their policies are own occupation. So if I might not be able to write, so stick a steak knife through my hand, or, had a stroke, for instance. And I can, because talking is part of my job, and I do broadcast a lot in the TV and the news and that kind of thing. But yet I might still technically be able to work doing, I don't know, at Tesco or data input or a different type of job that's not front facing. So then some insurers could say, well, you can still work, but it's not the same, because it's certainly not the same money. So in the event that I can't do my job as a journalist, I am insured for that. So whether or not I could be a dog walker or whatever, it doesn't matter. And I think that is really, because again, what's the point in paying for insurance to cover the salary you have if they can say, well, you can still do, work in a call center or whatever. So and I think that's the benefit of that. And also, at the end of the day, again, as we circle back to why this is important for women, is because it's not just about the money. We also have the responsibility of children, that if you can't look after your kids, you've got to pay someone. I don't have any family over here.
No.
I have, my ex-husband and I are very amicable, and we co-parent and we get along. And my mother-in-law, his mom, is really helpful, but that's it. He doesn't have any other family to help. My family's all in Canada. So, even I was thinking, if I got coronavirus, I was like, who would look after me? If I was really sick, I'm like, I'd have to get him to move back in. I mean, he would. And I was like, well, that's not a reason to wear a face mask. I don't know what is.
It's like, oh gosh, I'm sat in the garden and there's a robin just like lying on the lawn in front of me, sunbathing. It's really quite bizarre. I'm a bit shocked by that. I've never seen that before. Why is the bird sunbathing on my AstroTurf lawn? Anyway,
as long as it's alive, it's the main thing.
It's definitely alive. Like, Trevor's not here. Trevor's inside. Trevor's not killed it. Trevor's the cat, not a child.
Yeah. Trev always goes missing as well.
Oh yeah. We had a traumatic week last week. On that note, actually, well, maybe we've done insurance, haven't we? We've talked about death, we've talked about divorce, we've talked about insurance,
we've
talked about sexism. should we talk about our view on racism as well in the financial world? I know we're white, but
I think recently, it's funny, you and I talked about this recently, and I was telling you about how I was invited to go on a panel or do a talk. And I was just like, sure, I'll do it. And I never even asked, not even who else was on the panel. I was just like, it's great. I love to go, and I love doing speaking events.
Because you got to stay in a hotel in Scotland. Like, tell everybody why you said that.
I was going to go to Scotland. And at the time when I got asked, I was like, I just need to go somewhere. And
they would have fed you. They would have given you alcohol.
Yeah.
And a flight.
Exactly. And so I was like, sure, I'm in, I'll go. Yeah, let's do it. And I'll tell you how to save money while you're at it. And, in my, it's indicative of like where I was at with the, being on my own stage. And it came out on Twitter that it was suggested or pointed out or highlighted that it was completely white panel. And I remember when I saw it, because it had, the pamphlet type thing or the promotional marketing. And I looked and I was like, oh my God. And it dawned on me that I never even asked who anybody else was, because it never even occurred to me to be an issue. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And I'm like, wow, but that to me was a light bulb moment of what is my own white privilege.
Yeah.
Because I never even crossed my mind. I mean,
Yeah.
I just saw the opportunity to go on a trip and it would be great, but I never considered any of those options. And I feel like that is kind of a bit of a turning point for me, where in the past also I used to be like, oh, let me guess, I'm the token woman.
Yeah.
But then at the same time saying that, you know what, I might be the token woman, but thank goodness I'm there, because it's better to have me as the token woman than no woman at all. And
Yeah. Yeah. Because
I'm
I've
quite a loud one.
particularly about investing, where it's been an all white male panel. I mean, probably not in the, well, obviously not in the past 4 months, but last year, for definite.
Yeah, and it's certainly, I think that the best, like if we can have a takeaway from it all, it's like I can't necessarily change the industry, but I can start by changing my own decision making.
Yeah, that's exactly it though, right? I had the same conversation with Bola Soul a few weeks ago on the podcast, and she was like, just start with yourself.
Yeah.
Then it all just flows out. I mean, obviously we can influence our children,
Yeah.
but we can't really influence anybody else. I suppose we can influence people with our social media, because that's
Yeah,
part of our
but and
job. But
it's funny because once when I first started my blog and I was trying to learn how to make graphics, 'cause I didn't know what I was doing, like for the actual.
do we still know how to make graphics?
No, I can wing it. I couldn't tell you how to do it. And my best friend, one of the girls I grew up with, was checking it out, and she's like, "My Gammell, everybody's white in these pictures." And
Oh
I
my
was,
gosh, yeah. I've noticed this recently.
yeah,
I've
and
done
I
it
don't know if you've
too.
noticed, I don't use pictures of anybody other than personal pictures I've taken. So I don't use stock photos.
No,
And
I hate stock photos. I don't like it when
well, I
people
didn't know what I was doing in the first place. I didn't even know what a stock photo, I didn't.
no.
And I was just like, someone with shopping bags, they were terrible quality graphics anyway, but I didn't know at that stage. And,
It was
and
actually
this,
you holding shopping bags.
well, it is now. It's, if there's anybody, if you ever see a face, it's mine. But, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. And it wasn't intentional at all. But it was like maybe subconscious.
It
And,
is. It's subconscious bias, isn't it?
yeah.
It's
And
what we've
so,
been brought up with.
yeah, but then it just took one person to mention something, and then that kind of changed, and that's the thing that I think we can do. You can call someone out on it, but you don't have to be aggressive or rude. Like, this is my best friend who loves me. And she was
Yeah.
like, everybody's pretty white. And I was like, you're right. Thanks for mentioning it. Because if
Yeah.
you don't know until you know.
Yeah. And that's
And
probably my biggest take from the Black Lives Matter movement of the past couple of months in particular, is that I must say we're recording this in the middle of July 2020. So yeah, we're just creeping out of lockdown. But it's just the I don't want to say calling out, because like I've been called out on some stuff I've said, and I'm fine with it, because like I'm good with feedback as long as I respect the person giving me that feedback. If you're just some random on Twitter, you can just go do one. But
if
and
they
I
don't
think,
use their name,
huh?
I always say if they don't use their real name, then their
Yeah.
opinion doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, or if their profile picture is like a what do you call avatar or all
Yeah.
that.
I only take the opinions of actual people. But I do think that there's a way, and I've said this before, that some people have said, like, as a journalist, I'm not as kind of aggressive as in my interview style. And I've always said, well, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. That's,
Oh,
and
this is your mental phrase that you've made up.
it's not. I think it's a Canadian phrase. And
Okay.
I'm sure of it, but it's true though. The idea is if you're pleasant, you can still get your point across. And actually, I think when you point something out to someone, I mean, I'm not saying I do this, like, for instance, in my marriage, I didn't do this, but if you point it out in a nice manner, people
Yeah.
don't just automatically get defensive. And so when you say something in an aggressive way, they get defensive, and then they don't hear what you're saying because they've built up that wall.
Yeah.
So I like to slide it in without them knowing. And
I like that.
it's effective. Mm-hmm.
I
And sometimes it's perceived as a weakness if you're too nice, but not if you're nice on purpose.
I think that is called good negotiation.
Yeah, no, you don't have to be a dick
Um,
about it. That's
yeah,
my motto. You
don't
don't.
be a dick. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah.
yeah, but I think there's so many um, financial, finances generally in the financial world has been predominantly middle class white man um, environment, but I do think that it's changing, and I do think that it's taking a while. But if you look at the gender pay gap, for instance, it's
Oh
going
my
to be like
God. And look at the
another.
race pay gap.
Yeah, and then if you're a woman and a person of color, and it's going to be what, like another 100 years before there's a gender equality. And I just think, well, that is terrible. Like it just,
That's actually more of the issue, isn't it? It's if you're a black or a black or Asian
yeah,
woman.
it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
And I don't think it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter. But if that's what people are being paid, it matters. It does matter, if that makes sense. Like your
Yeah.
skin color shouldn't be an issue, and your sex or your gender or whatever you identify as shouldn't even factor into what you're
Or
earning.
age, or how you look. Like there's
No.
so many ways people are judged and are discriminated against. Your size, whether you're fat or thin, or
Yeah, yeah. There's so many, sweeping judgments, and I
but
just think,
particularly for women, the
yeah,
color of your hair. Oh my gosh, like
yeah. Well, I mean, if interesting, you said before that when you've been on ITV News, you got trolled a lot, but it wasn't about what you were saying; it was how you looked. And I had that, I've had that a lot in the past, and we've discussed this before. Why I'm very careful about certain things on public information,
yeah.
and because also, fine, tell me that you think that my teeth are too white, and I look like I'm in a pageant, which is what has been said before. And I'm like, I haven't whitened them. This is just how they are. But I'm like, who even says that? And I'm like, that's a very specific slam. Do you know what I mean? Like,
You look like it. But you look like you're in a pageant. That's actually a compliment.
no, it's not. It's like I'm an airhead.
Oh, one of my really good friends was Mrs. Nevada. So Eve Dawes. So there's Miss Nevada and there's
Yes.
Mrs. Nevada for the older women.
Yeah.
And Eve is like, she's absolutely stunning. She's one of my Las Vegas friends. And I met her. This is amazing. I was in a bar in Las Vegas, and she had my absolute dream Balenciaga shoes on. These like crystal £2,000 shoes.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Balenciaga. They were Labutan and
Mm-hmm.
Red Soul. And I went over to her. I'm like, oh my God, I love your shoes. Like they're the most beautiful thing in the world. Obviously, I was drunk.
Mm.
And then we became friends.
So you never know where you're going to meet someone.
It comes from being nice.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Again, I'm gonna Google that saying, and I'll send it to you because is a legitimate saying.
Right. We've been rabbiting on for 47 minutes, and I said our time limit was 45.
Yes.
So we need to shut
Rein
down
it
for
in.
the next 3 minutes. So use this time carefully to talk about sort of where you want to go with what's next for you, what's next for your business, and the future.
Okay. So I have a blog, and it's called Your Best Friend's Guide to Cash. And where I write, my kind of motto is how to get more bang for your buck no matter what your budget. So I never want to tell people not to spend it. I just prefer to tell people how to spend it smarter.
Yep.
And so I'm going to be really focusing on that in the coming months, because it's kind of the past 6 months I've been a bit distracted with other stuff at home. And I want to do more broadcast work, like professionally. I do a lot of stuff where I go on and do brand work, but I just
We love
really,
doing press days, don't we? We love doing press days.
We do, but when are we going to get to do those at the moment? But you know what? I have said that.
Home.
Well, yeah, now, I mean, I was able to do BBC News last week live from this very position because of lockdown. And that's actually, I think that's might help give women more opportunities than they maybe would have had before.
You don't need to sit in a studio in West London being transferred from one station to another. I've got a decent mic. You've got a decent mic. You can do it at home.
Exactly. And so, I just want to I think now that we're kind of through what feels like the uncertainty of the day to day, I mean, it's still, but I think now what I would like to do is I'd like to help people that are starting to worry, like, okay, this is going to keep going on and this is really going to affect my money, and all the payment holidays are coming to an end, and the furlough schemes and the redundancies are being made.
To come November, when all the furlough schemes, and then we're hit with Christmas, and we're still going to get the guilt of, oh my God, I need to buy the games console for my kids.
And all the MOTs have been holidayed until October. So everyone's waiting until October to get the car MOT. Then you're going to have car bills if it needs to be.
I need to talk to you about that because my neighbour's a mechanic and he gave me some information.
Okay. Excellent. And I just think it's going to be, I think, and I hate to be like a Debbie Downer, but I do feel like come autumn, it's going to be a bit, for many families, it's going to be a bit of a shit show. And pardon my language, but, and I'd like to be able to help in a practical way.
Yeah, totally. Like, we're both real life people going through.
We're all going through the same thing.
We're pretty tough stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have enough money.
Nobody has enough money. And you've got kids at home now. And I swear I like run a cafeteria. Like all my child just eats all day now. I only have one child, but if I had 3 kids, you know.
And boys.
Yeah.
Although I can feed my 3 boys for £9.90 a week.
I know, I saw that.
£9.90 each a week. So I've now got an extra 3,000 Instagram followers.
Oh, that's incredible. 3,000. That's incredible. Well done.
30,000 extra.
Well, it just goes to show you though, but these are issues that are actually important. Yes, it is important to think about the future and to plan but for a lot of people, the reality is they need to get through the month. You know, so it's about kind of having a balance of not putting your head in the sand about what you're going to do when you're 70. But right now people are like, how am I going to pay my bills?
I'm going to pay the mortgage next month.
And that's really stressful, and it creates like a sense of anxiety and overwhelm, and people don't really issues. And people don't know where to go, and if you've lost your job, you think, well, where am I going to get a job now? Everybody's looking. So I think if there's a way to kind of explain information in an easy to digest way, it's really important right now, because people don't have the energy anymore. It's like we've been on this treadmill of financial concerns and uncertainty that people now, they need to figure out what to do, and they're just like, oh.
It's been 17 weeks, right? 17 weeks, because I've been keeping lockdown spending diary every week since the first week, and I know everybody.
And I feel like,
but I'm over it.
And I just think through my blog, and I mean, I've actually have more work than I've had in 3 years. Like, I actually don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to physically do it all, but I will do it. But I'm not complaining at all. But that's a bit of an indicator that there is, you know, a desire for this information out there. And I think, you know what, knowledge is power. And if you can help people both ways, I mean, I'm not a martyr, I make money from doing this, like that's my job, but practical ways to do it. Like, don't overpay on your food shop if you don't have to, because that extra 25 quid might pay your energy bill, part of it. You know, it's just little things like taking from Peter to pay Paul. Another one.
Yeah. So what's your one sort of you know, like top tip for sort of right now?
My top tip is to go through your bank statements, keep telling my friends about this. Go through your bank statements and check out all those little things that you're paying for that you 17 weeks ago would have signed up for all these free trials because, you know, the Disney Plus, the Twinkle learning resources, all of these things that you thought, well, I'll just do that. I'll do that. And then those are all coming out of your account now. LinkedIn Premium sneaks up on me all the time. I don't know how. And if you go through, you might be able to find some things that you're paying for and completely not using. And if you could claw back £80 a month or £50 a month right there, that's a start. Yeah. And that's you're not doing without, you're just not paying for something. You know, I found a newspaper subscription for $4.99 a month. It's only a $5, but if I'm doing that with a few other things, that all adds up. Yeah. And so I think that's a good place to start. And then sometimes it does kind of draw your attention to, I'm paying what for my energy bill? I'm paying what at LD? The other useful thing is I use the Emma app, and it tells me how many times. So back when I was married, my husband was like, well, we only need to spend this amount of food in shopping a week. I was like, no, we don't. And he was like, well, when I do the food shop at Aldi, this is how much we spend. Then the Emma app analyzed how many trips to the Tesco Express he had done. And I think it was like 17 or something. And so then I could calculate what he was technically spending a week. And yeah, it was, and I was just like,
the divorce?
No, it didn't actually. He actually was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, see, but it highlighted how much I was spending at Boots on makeup and how much I was spending here and there in the little Amazon purchases. And you know, you can sign up for it and you can just do it for a month. Yeah, it can't hurt, and you know, it does the work for you. And that's what I think I want right now. I've got enough to do. Like
like we've got more than enough to do.
Well, yeah, and your child's at home running around breaking her glasses every 5 minutes. Like there's enough going on. So if I can get an app to crunch the numbers, perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I suggest.
Cool, wonderful. Right, so social media then. How do people find you on your
find me on Instagram is my fave. So I am on there as Your Best Friend's Guide to Cash. I'm on Twitter as Cara Gammell, and I also have a Facebook page for my blog called Your Best Friend's Guide to Cash as well. So I like to put money saving hacks, everything from, it's not just all protection and pensions. It's like,
no, you like writing about toilet rolls and bananas and tinfoil.
Yeah, exactly. And
that is a really great summary of your top tips, isn't it?
There you go. So you never know, if you a little bit here and there, it all adds up. And then if you can use that money to pay for something else, put
something nice, like nails or lipstick.
Yeah, or just to put food on the table. Or, you know, like one of the things I bought a Clark's foot measuring device.
Oh my God, you've gone on about this so much.
Because I don't know why the British are obsessed with Clark's shoes for their kids. Canadian children just wear normal shoes and they all walk fine. Okay.
And a Clark's pair of shoes are not that great and they're like 40 quid a pop.
Yeah, but I remember my sister's like, "It's Audrey wearing Clark's?" when she was like 2. It's like, yeah. And she's like, I don't know, my kids wore normal shoes like every other kid in Canada, and they're not hobbling around. But so I bought this device, measuring, I don't know, what do you call it? A measurer. And
a foot measurer, like the one they use in the Clark's shop.
So then I can buy the stuff at the outlet. And then I can measure Audrey at home, make the most of the outlet. I don't have to go to the mall, and, you know, save myself 20 quid. That's first time I bought the shoes on the outlet. I made my money back on the measuring device. So it's just little things like that. I don't want to spend 40 quid on shoes, but if she has to have the Clark shoes, I might as well pay half price.
Do you know what I do? This is really cheeky, but I'm a really cheeky person. I go into Clark's and I get the boys' feet measured, and then I'm like, oh, actually, we've changed our mind. We don't want any shoes from here.
Yeah. Well, I just can't even be bothered to go in there anyway, because then we'll walk by the work.
It's pressure, isn't it? And they try to make you buy shoes.
Oh, I don't care. I'll say no. It's the trip from the car to Clark's that ends up costing me, because you go past the works, or, you know, and it's £5 on tat that's just going to kick around my house.
Or on glitter.
Yeah,
as
lots.
you are covered in glitter.
I am like a stripper. A dancer, I should say.
On that note,
thanks. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. No judgments here.
Yeah, no, you make really good income from being a dancer.
Yeah.
I've got lots of friends who do it. Right.
Okay, great.
We've gone over an hour. You are officially the longest podcast. That is not a surprise. Well done on the Mrs. Mummypenny Talks record.
Well, thank you. I like to set the bar high. Anyway, thanks for having me.
That's quite all right. It was really, really good. Like, I loved talking.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear what if anybody has any of their own top tips that they share with you. Do let me know.
Yeah, put it so this goes onto YouTube, and it will be on all the podcast apps, obviously on my website, but I will put like show notes. That's what you're meant to call them, isn't it?
That's right. I
sort of wing things there. I put all the links in the show notes. So I'll put links to like Lifesearch, and who else did we mention? Can't remember. I'll watch it back and I'll pick up all the links. Obviously, all your stuff. Anyway.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, lovely. Okay. See you later.
I'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.